Okay. I didn't actually remove the banner. Hang on. There we go. All right. This is not working out. I need to change some stuff. Hello and welcome. And as you can tell, I'm sick. I was sick yesterday and I'm a little more sick today, but it is what it is. So we're here. So I'll be a little bit slower on the uptake today, and that's okay. But today we're actually revisiting an old project. And throughout this week for Career Week, you've been talking about revamping your resume or like doing cool new projects to like really make you shine. And sorry, yeah, dang, I'm sick. I'm getting rest, I'm getting fluid, so it's fine. Yeah. So you've been talking all week about how to really like make yourself marketable, how to make yourself like stand out from everybody else, really. And so when you're going through your resume, you're realizing that you're like changing the wording and changing how you basically sell yourself to an interviewer, whether it's a future employee, employer, HR, you name it. You're talking to people and you're selling yourself. And so as you work through your resume, you are probably listing projects that you've done to showcase the experiences that you have. Um, oh my gosh, it's Erin. Hi. Erin helped me out last night while I was finishing some stuff for this. First one indeed. First one indeed. But yeah, so I think we'll probably have a pretty tiny audience today because it is pretty early in the morning. I am horribly jet lagged, so I've been getting up at like 5. And so I planned for this and was like, yes, I'm going to have a morning stream. So then I can have the rest of my day to do whatever it is I need to do, which is have a lot of meetings apparently today. Anyway, so yeah, so Career Week, you're building all these things, making things better. And something that hasn't really come up yet is how do you bring back an old project? So you have all these projects in your resume, you're selling it, you're saying like, oh, it's this great project, it solves world hunger, all this other fun stuff. And the reality is you probably haven't touched that project since you made it. And it was probably at a hackathon or it was probably for school. And as soon as you were done, you're like, I'm done. Like, no, it's just not happening. And while that's fine, the further away from a project you get, the less you're going to remember. And so for hackathons, you usually have like dev post or whatever the project submission area is to pretty much guide you and tell you like what the project was even about. But the reality is you should probably come back to old projects and kind of figure out like, okay, with the skill level that I am now, what happened? What did I do? Like, is this actually a good project or am I just embellishing the truth? And also by coming back to an old project, you should definitely like, you'll be benefited by it in that you can say like, yeah, I did revisit it. I learned from past me. And so that's what we'll be doing today. Excuse me while I blow my There's going to be a lot of that today and tomorrow probably. It's fine. I'm always sick every global hack week. It's either allergies or I actually get sick. Oh well. Stay safe out there. Wear masks. Like, stay healthy. Sleep. Cool. So now that we've revisited the premise of like actually going through and saying like, well, let's look at our old projects. Well, let's look at an old project. Back in April, I did my first Global Hack Week streams, and I made a project called Shiver, where you can see here on the screen. Like, we did a couple commits. It was obviously back in April, and the only thing I remember is Bumble for sharks, and I'm like, yeah, that's enough to remember it. Do I know how it works? No, and that's what we're going to spend today on. And so there's a couple things that we noted, like what it was for. We said like, oh, we're pulling data from this OSearch place. Like, I do know what it is, but if you haven't been to that stream, you have no idea what I'm talking about. And so there's also setting up Flask. So for me, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally wanted to learn how to use Flask. I don't know what I meant by played with cards for sharks. Like, what? But I did leave myself a list of to-dos. And so that's something that we can actually jump off of from like, okay, I had to design the web app. I'm pretty sure I meant the UI. Pick out data from the JSON subset. I don't know what this means. ChatGPT Shark bios. I think we actually did this. Integrate one more API because it was API week back in April. And auth login, which I'm pretty sure we also did. So my prep work for this stream is actually here. which is that I really wanted to kind of be more familiar with the project so we could like just get in and start going. Thank you for reminding me that I forgot to provide the check-in link. Thank you. Yeah, and then so that way people know the check-in link. I'll leave that up for a bit. But yeah, so there's some stuff I remember from this and stuff I don't. And with my to-do list, Jesus, breathing is hard. With my to-do list, so that way y'all can read, I went through and was like, okay, like I'm going to take screenshots, I'm going to update the UI, I'm going to do all these crazy things that are going to be amazing and help us have like just like pure technical workshop. And then I got sick and I was traveling and I didn't do that. But what I did do was I was like, all right, well, let's start simple. How do I run things? What Python version is this even? And I realized that actually I made it from a Conda environment and I never actually like ported that anywhere. So when I was trying to work from my laptop, I couldn't do anything, which I'm like, this is not sustainable. This is not good for me coming back to a project. But that's why we're doing this stream, because like, hey, that's a problem. That's not sustainable code. It's not a good idea for like a project you want to sell to an employer and be like, oh yeah, I have no idea how it runs. I have had interviews where they're like, yeah, so you said you had this project, like run it for me, or like show me the code from this and explain what it does. Which if you can't, like, that's a problem. So some people are joining in and some people have left. Totally fair. I am very tired and very sick today. So this will be a bit of a boring stream compared to probably tomorrow's, where we'll have done a little more stuff and get a better understanding of stuff. Which is to say that anyway, so that's for what we're going to do today. And then I'll pop the event stuff back up so that way people can check in. We're coming back to a basic thing, which is when you join your resume, you come up with projects and you leave them there, you never come back to them, which can be problematic when you're trying to remember what the project's even about. And as I walked through what I put in my README, which is a terrible README, mind you, it was awful. That is not helpful at all, unless you happen to know the trigger words for your future self, which I kind of did and I kind of didn't. The idea is that like, well, you want to be able to run your work without having to be like, what did I do? And I obviously couldn't, which is based on my notes. I did yesterday export the requirements, so that will be part of today's push. Lol, how do I even run this? I made assumptions and then I found out, oh, it's just it's Flask run. It's not even Python, there's no key, it's just Flask run. I'm like, oh, cool. I should have written that down. Yeah, I had no requirements.txt for the Python stuff. I wasn't sure if I was using pip or conda. I never finished parsing the shark data. Like I had like sample data, but I hadn't made the database and that requires a little more focus. So I did that yesterday and I'm like, cool, now that I've done the database stuff, stuff is going to be broken. So we'll spend today fixing that as also a way to like refamiliarize ourselves with the code. And I also made notes of like future features. Like maybe I should be checking the original API and seeing if there's updates to timestamps, because we were looking at, and let me go find the link, I have it somewhere. Here it is. So we were using this, OSearch, which showcases actually various sea animals, not like sea and ocean animals, not just sharks, but I decided that this was going to be a riff off of a number of jokes I have in the community with like a number of friends. Being that we're tracking sharks and we try to just like educate people, give them a fun way of interacting with them while still representing the same information. So it's not that we're like falsifying things or anything, but we're providing a new way of engaging with this data. And it's cute, it's funny, like inside jokes, but it also makes it a very memorable project, which is something you need for any like resume project. Sorry. Is just, what do you have as the story? So you've heard probably throughout the week so far is that you really want a good resume that sells yourself. And also something that may not have been mentioned is, what is the story you're telling? Who are you and what is your style of development? And so because I'm a PhD student, we talk about stories a lot, just because that's where the focus of my stuff is. Me too, fam. Me too. I'll feel better in a few more days, I think. Like things, we're over the hump, I think, because like my sore throat wasn't bad this morning. And hello, friends. Yeah. So I've made a note of like future features. where I'm like, okay, like if we get new data, how do we update it and make sure that Bumble for Sharks is actually current? Where am I eventually hosting this? Like, is this something that I want publicly accessible? Is this something that I want like that people can download locally, which means I have a smaller audience that will likely interact with it? So there's some pros and cons to that. And also that's something I can be like, hey, I can go learn about that and sell that as part of the project. But I've also noted some problems. Like, how do we update the database? Is this a weekly scrape? Is it a cron job? That would tie into whether or not I'm hosting things, because then I can set up like, what's it called? That's okay. We'll move on. Brain said no, and we're going to respect that. But you also notice some other comments to myself, which is like, what comments? I didn't comment my code. Shame on me. I have 2 degrees in software engineering and I didn't comment my code. And that's kind of problematic. So we are going to go back. We're going to comment things as we go through it because we want our future self to benefit from it. Is there anything we need to update? What's the purpose of each file? Because like I was looking at the file names and I'm like, what does this mean? Like, what does this do? And I'll show you what I mean when we actually jump to it. But like there's like nuanced stuff here. Yeah, I didn't comment and I'm sorry. I was too hyped for Global Hack Week and it was my first one and I was so focused on getting a project and then I didn't comment. Anyway, yeah, so I did some screenshots. But now we have our to-do for today. Hang on, I'm gonna blow my nose again. Okay, I can breathe again. Right. So we have a couple to-dos. We've talked about resumes, project selling yourself. And in order to do that, we can have a few choices, which is that when we come back to a project, we decide, are we just like dumping this? Are we deleting this project from existence? Like, does this deserve to exist? Is this a bad example? Like, is there just no hope of fixing this? It's a bad idea. Like, morally, this is problematic, all sorts of things. And you should think about that, because if you name a project and an employer is like, yo, but did you think about this? And you're just like, no. And they're like, oh, that's not really company values of us. Because every company has certain values, whether it's honesty or morality or empathy or something. And if you have a project owner that doesn't match that, yeesh, not great. So I'll give an example. I ran across a project where they're like, yeah, we use ChatGPT. And I'm like, all right, ChatGPT, okay, how'd you use it? Like, was it just generating shark files? That's super silly. No impact whatsoever. I'm jet lagged. I've been up since 5. Actually, I was earlier. I went to bed at 4 p.m. Or no. I was up late last night. I was really tired, though. I was passing out. I did see a couple comments about being bad at resumes. And I think it's not that you're bad at resumes, maybe, but you might be bad at selling yourself. And this is what I mean by like matching company like ethics and values, because your resume should represent what they're looking for. You should give them enough of the story to get who you are, but not so much that they can't ask you questions like, what do you mean by this? What was this project? So for example, that's why we're talking about this project, which is, who needs caffeine when you have anxiety? Yes. Also, when in doubt, GitHub Student Pack, you'll get so many resources. But right. So when you're talking with a potential employer, you want to make sure that you're hitting like the things that they're looking for. And researching a company ahead of time will help you customize those things. So like I mentioned, this project is actually a riff off a very old project before I even got involved in the community, like hackathons and MLH and everything really, where I was like, hey, my uncle hates sharks. Wouldn't it be funny if I made a like little mini script that it would pull sharks nearby him and text him like, hey, sharks in your area, here's the name and information. And that was my first like baby project when I was first learning how to code. And so I just put Shark Tracker in my resume, and employers would go through and they're like, Shark Tracker, what is Shark Tracker? And then I had to tell the story of how my uncle hates sharks. And it's very personable, it's very unique, it's very memorable. And so as a result, you have people who are going to remember that story and they're going to be like, oh yeah, like maybe like their skills weren't up to par, which my skills definitely were not up to par when I was an undergrad, but they remember the shark story. And they're like, okay, but that was a good story and I remember it and it sticks in your brain more. And so that's what I mean by selling yourself, selling the story, and deciding with a project whether you reject it or not in your resume. Where, again, I was telling this brief story about how someone used ChatGPT. For us, we used ChatGPT for shark bios. Silly, easy, no impact. The project that I heard about, and this is not a bad project, it's a great foray, but it's not something I would actually talk to someone who's a very like ethical person or an ethical company. Not that there's a ton of those, but there are some where they used ChatGPT to take very one-sided articles, whether they were right or left-leaning, and generated an oppositional article about it. And so it's kind of like, ew. So one, it's ChatGPT generated, so there's no guarantee of truth in the matter. It could be that they've just like found the what's it called? What's the word that's opposite? The antonym for certain words. And they're just like, yeah, it helps you consider both sides. And I'm like, hang on, that's kind of naive to assume that ChatGPT will inherently give you a correct oppositional article. They do exist. There are people who write for both sides, but it's kind of problematic if you just assume that a generated thing will do that. And so if you come to an ethical consideration of it, it's like you're putting more false information out in the world by doing this. And so that's what I mean by reject. Cool project. You can instead sell it as like you were learning about how to use ChatGPT, learning about some of the problems that come from using ChatGPT naively or from lack of knowledge or in creating misinformation. But if you sell it as, I learned how to use ChatGPT to generate articles because there's not enough oppositional viewpoints, don't do that. So then we come to the idea of revision. Is this project salvageable? Yeah. Can we save it? Can we do something with it? Can we change some things and give it like that new punch that it needs to like really be successful? And sometimes that is. And like I can go through a few of my projects where I'm like, yeah, I used to recreate games because I really loved old school classic games like Galaga and Pac-Man and Tetris. And that was my way of learning because it was motivational for me. The thing is, we already know how things are going to work. And there are a decent amount of people who actually do that. So in revising it, I might add a new, like nuanced way to play the game. So looking at Nintendo, not saying like this is a bad thing or anything, they're saying like how they revised and then eventually revitalized these old classic games. You have Tetris 99, which was originally Tetris is a single player game, or like you play one like the two screens, and it's basically like who gets to like the highest score first, or who like ends up losing because they've gone out of screen with their tiles. Tetris 99 is like everyone's attacking each other and a whole bunch of other stuff. So like that's a great revision to an already established game. And so we jump into revitalize. How do we bring new life into a project? And I know I'm talking, we haven't like started coding yet, but this is important to consider because even if you don't stay for the coding part, this is still something that you can do on your own with your own resume projects. Oh dear, there are a number of people here today. Okay, maybe it's not an early stream. All right. But yeah, so you're revitalizing your project. And that's kind of what we're doing today is we want to revitalize Shiver to give it any punch, see where we're at. We also want to revise because I didn't comment. And that's a problem because if I were showing my old Shiver code to an employer and they're like, yeah, there's no comments. And I'm just going to be like, did I actually write clean code that someone can read and understand? Here's the cheat. No, I didn't. Then you should. And so you should go through and at least comment that. So that could be a revision too. So I have a few suggested features from the Sharks in Your Area concept where we go and use Google API, we figure out the distance, we show the nearby sharks, and then we also expand the radius, much like you would any social dating app or like friendship app or whatever else is out there, or however you want to refer to it. The short version is we want to see who's in our area. And then eventually, and this is something that chat can think about, I don't know if we'll get to it today, but we probably will for tomorrow's stream, which is how do we optimize these inevitable calculations to keep calculating for what I now know as 417 records. Thank you, past me, which is yesterday. How do we make sure that we're not calculating the distance 417 times each time? So let's say I've changed my radius and it has to figure out who is far, who is close. But let's say I have 10 users. Okay, now that's 10 times 417 records that I need to calculate, plus whatever the mathematical cost of the operation is for that. okay, let's say that this becomes something that I host online. Let's say that now everyone here on stream, there's like over 30 people already, that maybe, or at least there's 29, so like not quite over 30, but it briefly was up there and then it dropped down again. But let's say that now there's 30 people, or we keep magnitude, like increasing the magnitude. There's 300, there's 3,000. That calculation gets kind of ridiculous. We're considering it on a grand scale of like, what's the operational cost? Or in like data structures and algorithms terms, like what is the, I just did these, the like ON time of doing these things. And that's still important to consider when you're doing things at scale. And so this is another concept when you're working on projects is, can you write something that scales? And chances are no, because you're still figuring things out and learning and whatnot. But it's good to consider as like when you're writing your code, you want to write things at scale, unless your company doesn't want that, which I've run into. There are times where sometimes they're like, yeah, we want things to consider at scale. We add new features. Fine. And sometimes they're like, no, we want this thing to work in this box and only this box, and we'll consider scale later because it delays development. And I'm like, okay. So it varies. Then we have creating a profile, which builds on the Auth0 work we did previously from creating a profile that you can interact with it, where you'd create your name, your location, your shark type, all that stuff, whether or not that it's generated versus created. Because if we have users on this app versus the ones that we've gathered from the Shark API, we want to be able to distinguish who's a human user and who's the original Shark that it came from. And then crowdsourcing again, where I'd be asking chat, like, is there anything else necessary here? And then leading into the weeds of things is like metrics. Everyone is all about data today, and managing data is pretty important, where you want to understand like how popular things are. So like right now, I have a view of how many viewers I have. And that tells me like, is it popular? Is it not? And I can see it in real time-ish. And that's important to me because then I can go like, oh, hey, I just had a bunch of people just join. Let me like re-clarify what's going on versus I just lost a bunch of people. Clearly my topic sucks and I should never do this again. All sorts of things. But metrics are important to evaluate. Do you need to scale your server, your host, your computational time, and the cost of that? These are all important to see, like, when are spikes happening? Like, is there a specific time of year that like K-12 teaches about sharks and they all find this app or something? And so do I need to adjust for that? And so that's where you get into cloud platforming and management for that. And that's a whole other like deep dive. But the point is we're thinking at scale. And then finally we have IAMs, which I'm like, I've never done IAMs. I don't know anything about that, which is why I'm like, maybe someone of you does. And so finally, we want to review the code for feature proofing, quality code check, and of course, commenting. And so the reality is today is probably commenting and reading through the past code and going, what happened? Why does this work? Because this is like something you should be doing regularly, but not everybody does. Nobody has the time. Some people are like, man, I really don't want to see this project again. It happens. So yeah. So let's talk more about this in like very concrete specifics, which is that we're spoofing a resume chat. I promise you I put this slide together like weeks ago, which is what's the story. So we have Shark Tracker. We're calling it Shiver. And the tagline is that it's Bumble for sharks. So one of the thoughts that I had was, it's great for learning about the ocean. I don't know that it actually is, but sure it is now. And one of the things that I wanted was that I wanted to learn about ChatGPT, Auth0, and Flask. 3 things that I had missed. 3. Jesus. 3 things that I'd never learned about. And so what we're going to do is we're going to improve it, where we want to look at what would be best for future employers, what we need to do better on this, etc. And so I mentioned that I went through and I updated the database, which is that I went from just like a subset of the data and actually connected it back to the API. So this was the original where I just had init database, put in some dummy values, and that was it. That was not it. After yesterday, it went through and I fixed it. We're now, I deleted init DB because we don't need it anymore. But I also I didn't remember that SQLite 3, when you just hit connect to a file, it'll create it if it doesn't exist. And I'm like, oh shoot, like if I delete database.db and reset everything, like what happens? Do I need to recreate a file? No, it doesn't for me, which is good to comment because I'm like, yeah, what does happen? We open it, we have a cursor at the start of our data, we have the endpoint, which originally when I saw this, I was like, yeah, that's a Google Maps API. No, it's not. It is for the sharks. It's for OSearch, not Google. So yeah, comments are good. So now this is cleaned up. This is a lot more clarified in that now I know what things do. So for every strike, we've gotten the attributes, et cetera, et cetera. And so now I've left questions to myself about future improvements too, where at the bottom I have write to DB. Is there a better way to mass write this? Because I know that with JavaScript or anyone that uses promises, asynchronous callbacks, that there's a way that you could actually store the data repeatedly and then mass write it to your database. That there's different ways you can do it where it's actually not, it's time intensive to manually write promises, and that's not what we're doing here. Where you write one promise at a time. You should chain them or use one giant promise. And I don't know if there's a way to do that non-promise wise, but for the SQLite database writing, where I'm manually writing each and every record. And let's say there was 10,000 records, that would take a long time. So that part is not scalable. And I know that, which is why I wrote a comment, is there a better way to mass write this? So if I ever deleted the database, needed to rewrite something, how would I better, more optimally do that in the future? So it's those things like that that we're going to be doing today. So also, how do we improve it for ourselves? Commenting. So much commenting. Yeah. So let me go ahead and go through chat, and let me open up our code database while we're at it. Projects can be pretty useful. It really depends. It doesn't hurt. If you already have like extensive experience in your jobs, I would say like no, but it's good to show you're doing stuff outside, just in case you're not able to talk about what you've done at work. If you're under a lot of NDAs, if you work for the government or for security, sometimes you may not be able to talk about things, or maybe you've worked on patent pending work that prevents you from talking about a specific topic or the work that you've done. I have friends who are unable to switch jobs or are like delayed by a year or cannot work in a certain topic if they decide to switch. And so projects help by showing like, yes, I am experienced in this. I'm not allowed to talk about it, but here's these projects showcasing my abilities in similar spaces. So it depends. And I need to blow my nose. Breathing is so nice. All right. So yeah. What I did, let's see. So yeah, you saw the screenshots. I've also updated the README a bit, where we crossed out the previous thing. We checked off what we did, and we also checked off some of the to-dos that weren't quite accurate. So actually, these should be moved elsewhere. And what I'll do is I'm going to push this work so that way, if everyone can do that. What I'm going to do is I'll push this work. I'll share the link to the GitHub. Y'all can fork it from there. And you can also run off and do your own thing with it. Like, this is open, like, do whatever you want, whatever, make it better, because you probably will. Just because this was supposed to be a learning project for me. And so you're welcome to take it, run with it, do whatever you want. Please don't like take over the world. Common decency, morals and ethics of who you interview, just that. But yeah, so I've made a couple career work to-dos. We have reviewing the code. I kind of started that, but not quite. I did finish parsing the data. Yay. And I populated the DB, and then I didn't comment. So we're going to comment today. And it's not that I'm misusing this time. It's showcasing the importance of it, because we're going to live watch me figure out what I did in the past, which will be a very accurate representation of what it might be for you if you didn't comment. So I highly recommend you comment. May need to blow my nose in a bit. And then we'll decide what the future features are. So let's go ahead and save that. The bios are still fine. We don't need actually Shark data JSON anymore, but I won't delete it just in case there's bugs or issues that I want to reflect on and see the data without repeatedly calling the API. Because if you're around for API week or you have an understanding of API calling, you'll be aware that sometimes there's a restriction or a limitation on the number of calls you can make for an API. The more you do, the more likely you're going to have your IP banned because you're spamming it, which is what is a problem when you scrape for data. There are some websites that track for this kind of stuff. It was like, hey, there's like a lot of pings on this website. Let's go block this one IP that's doing this repeatedly. So just in case, we'll keep that. And let's see. So we don't need bios again. DB is going to be deleted because it's no longer applicable. It doesn't make sense to keep it. But maybe we'll rename shark.py into initdb because that actually is a more accurate representation of it. Yes, it is. Move to recycling bin. And so we also have the requirements.txt that I exported, and that will also be, That will also be put in the GitHub because that was not initially available. So this was made using Conda. And I'm pretty sure there's a way that you can just like take the requirements.txt of that, which I'm pretty sure is, this line here. Conda create name environment, this file. There you go. So now everybody can also have the runtime environment they need to run this in the first place. And the last thing we should also add, to run this project. Last run. That's important. I didn't know how to run the project prior. Set up Conda environment using rec.txt. And sorry, I have switched keyboards and I forgot how to use it for a minute. Actually, we can use numbers. That's fine. There we go. All right. So yeah, readme. Quick check. So this will be broken when I push it, by the way, because I haven't checked that anything else can run. Let's rename this instead to init shark table. Because that's what it's doing. The only thing it's initializing is the shark table in our schema. And we only have this. And so I've left this commented for the future in case I ever need to drop the table for whatever reason, because I actually changed the schema itself to we're dropping the table if the sharks table exists. Oh yeah, actually I already did that. Well, I did that. Don't have to delete that. We can delete that now. So the way this is called is anytime schema is opened, we go through that cursor. If sharks table exists, delete it all, and then recreate that using the data that we have. And so the schema has also changed, where instead of having like, I think it was a timestamp when it was added, we now have things like name and age and gender, all the attributes that would have come from the API call for each shark. The thing is, not all of them will have certain fields. And so there may be a chance that actually they don't know the age for whatever reason. And so it should be null. And so I did run into that when I was updating the schema, where I think it was, what was it? It might have been the type/species of shark. And maybe this should be renamed to species for the sake of understanding, that it didn't exist. They didn't have a species type for it, which I'm like, ooh, that's weird. I thought they would have that, but I had to remove that not null because it broke my stuff. So so the schema has also been updated. You'll see those changes as well, but we don't have to really look at these anymore because now the data is in our database, which is going to be pushed in at GitHub as well. And so you'll have access to all the data pre-parsed, and you should be good to go. So again, there's more comments. I've also have test lines in here to be like, hey, let me make sure the database actually has data. And so I've removed that because then you're like just fetching all the records. And I was like, I could print out into individual records like name, print name of each record, or I could print the number of records because anytime I'm using SQLite and I'm getting a query, I need to process that result. So all commented now, understandable now for my future self. Good habits, right? So this is good to go. We don't need to rerun that. And then, and this is separate from Flask run. This would literally just be Python init sharktable.py and let it do its thing. All right, so let's go ahead and hopefully push it and it works. I don't know if I have to relog in or anything, but let's see. Let's take a look at what things are like. I've done a status check because I don't know what I've pushed, what I've added, etc. Yeah. So everything's been modified and things have been deleted. So I want to add it. So this is not good Git practice. Don't just use dot. That means add everything. And let me double check actually. README database init schema shark static bios. Yeah. Okay. So logically, my environment page should be, my API keys should not be pushed. Okay. But I do want to check out a new branch. Let's do career week. I'm pretty sure this is it. Yeah. And let's make sure everything moved with us. Yes, good. Okay. Git commit initial career week push. So this is not a good commit. So we should clarify what the heck's going on in this push. Where we want to say we've updated schema and finished parsing data. So this is a really long commit message. But if we were to look at our GitHub now in the future, we're like, oh, hey, this summarizes what we did in our files. We updated the schema, we finished parsing and shark data. So we can actually shorten this to updated schema, finished parsing shark data, enter. We like to make sure that everything is there so we don't have multiple commits. Looks like everything is in there. And push. Yes, that. Now push. Okay, let me go get the link for everybody now. Shiver. We want the, let's refresh so we get the branch. And so the reason I'm pushing this to a new branch is, again, because this is different work, but also because it's good practice to push to a separate branch, have like a main branch that you want to work on that becomes your like functional branch. So the main branch does have functional code and app and things that work. This one, not so much, which I know about, which is what we're going to fix. So let me go ahead and paste this. And like I said, y'all can run off, do whatever you want with it. That's fine. Please don't take over the world, do anything immoral. Thank you very much. And then, yeah. Let's go ahead and minimize that. And let's take a look at what we have. So from our new understanding that Flask run will call app.py, now let's go read what the heck we did. So we have these already grayed out imports, which is all of these get information. And so it looks like I was calling the database, but I don't know why I commented it out. So that's another thing. It's like, well, why did I comment this? Why are we not using it? And so I'm leaving notes as we go as a way of knowing that I'm not going to get all of the answers just yet, but I want to make sure I know I can come back to it. And so this stands out rather than putting it in this, put it here. And so before I start really commenting things, every single language will probably, every programming language will probably have a commenting standard. You'll see this in when you're employed. Every company has a standard or should have a standard for how they document. And so there's a couple different theologies with regards to cleaning up your code or having good code. There's the idea of clean code and self-documenting code, as well as using commenting standards. And so with Python, it's like PEP 400 something, where it determines how you comment. At the beginning of a function, you're supposed to have a specific layout. If you're familiar with Java, I don't know the exact name of it, but there are things like you have slash asterisk asterisk, you hit enter, sometimes you'll have an autofill, but you'll put things like the input, the parameters, and the outputs. And so you'll clarify what the types of them are, especially with Python being untyped or generally like loosely typed, it's beneficial to not reuse variables, which I definitely did in that one shark.py, which we renamed. So I actually, oh no, I didn't. I did previously though, where I was like, oh, data equals request.get, and then I said data equals json.loads data.text, which is not good. Don't do that. Because then with the loosely typed nature of Python, you don't actually know what type's going on. But because other things are stricter type, like Java and I think C++ and C, you're not able to just say like, oh, you know how this was an integer? Well, now it's a string. You can't do that in those because they're so strictly typed. And so you really want to consider those in your commenting and the way you write your code, that you're not doing those repeatedly. And so again, having these thoughts and mentioning those considerations when you're interviewing, you're not going to be asked, how do you comment and how do you document? You have to prove it by example. And so you'll also have to ensure that like when you're talking about it, you can say, when I first did this project, I didn't comment. when I came back to this project, I had a better understanding of clean code and self-documenting code and various other buzzwords. There's a number of ways you might approach this, but being knowledgeable about them, or even saying like, I use this commenting standard to help me read my code in the future. And so I'll pull it up really quickly because I don't remember. Python commenting standard, PEP 8. Yeah, I was totally off. But there's a style guide for Python code. And so consistency is important, readability counts. And so there's all these ideas and rulings that basically say like, here's how you should write your code so that people can read it. They have things like indentation, whether you use tabs or spaces, the maximum line length. So readability is key, right? So if we go back, and so we'll actually be able to sometimes, yeah, right here. So we can see line 20, column 116. That's not really readable. But this is also like HTML, which is not a great example. But if we go to this, you can see that things go off the page. And that is column 77. And if we go back to PEP 8, they said limit all lines to a maximum of 79 characters. But how do you do that, right? And so there's different ways, whether it's you like hit enter. I think you can do it here. Certain things you can put on new lines. I think it's actually this. Yeah, so you can do that, and that will shorten it. And again, this makes it more readable on a small screen, especially with today's, like, you know, everybody uses tablets and laptops and surfaces and like PCs and desktops. Everyone's view of their code will be different, but if you keep it consistently readable, things are better. That said, a lot of people who use Visual Studio Code or certain IDEs have like an auto wrap feature, which means that they don't really have to deal with doing it themselves. But that can be problematic for those who don't use that, because there are people who are old school, who will not use auto wrap features. Instead, they'll do it manually because it's good code. And so when I'm saying good code, I've mentioned a couple things like clean code. There's a literal book about it. Hang on, I gotta blow my nose again. Okay, so I was mentioning about clean code. The selling point here is that you should write code that's readable. It's often used in Agile, which is a development approach similar to like the waterfall method and V model and all these other things. But the thing is, clean code is actually pretty important because at least you want it readable, etc. I also mentioned self-documented code, which is the idea that you should be able to read code and understand what happens without having to comment it, because there is a point where commenting is excessive. And so let me see if there's a good example of that. So if someone were really familiar with this like URL, let's say it's a really common like API call. Like I think there's a lorem ipsum API out there that lets you autofill data. People who are familiar with WebDiv are really familiar with that API compared to OSearch, which is for sharks. And so we know that request.get is generally going to mean get an API. And so the comment here is more about the URL than it is about what's going on. And so I don't technically need to do for every shark get attributes here because it already says that in the code itself. It says for shark in shark data features. That is really readable. I don't actually need the comment there. I mean, it was for me because I was in a fever haze yesterday. So I was like, what am I doing? But there are things that I've split up here. And then you get into the idea of like, well, when should you comment your code and how often and how should you comment your code? And I actually did have a class on this where they said that your functions, your methods should not be longer than what you can see on a screen. And I don't mean zoom all the way out and go, everything on this screen is readable. No, I think your functions are actually supposed to be sub 50 lines. Or like sub 20 lines or something like that. Generally, it's a range and it depends, but like it's supposed to be a small number of lines. The moment you have a function that's like 100 plus lines, no, you really shouldn't be doing that because then people have to go like, okay, this function does this, and in order to achieve this function, it does this, and they have to do that for 100 lines. So if you're doing like math in a function, are there things that you can abstract away? And this is where you have the concepts of abstraction and encapsulation and all these other like programming paradigms and ideas, right? So I also want to then talk about a fun little nerd fact. NASA code rules. So NASA has coding standards, which if you are interested in space exploration or familiar with it or want like nerdy stuff, hi, there is a guideline for safety critical code, which is important. So I briefly worked in aviation, and there was really, really, really strict rules about how we coded. Let me zoom in so people can see this, if it will let me. Come on. I'm not doing the right key code. There we go. Come on. There we go. Okay. So they already talk about critical code, which is really important, again, for that readability, for functionality, for scalability, and more. And the idea is, like, at the time, when you think about like set jump or long jump constructs, that's actually based in like assembly or like Fortran. And so also giving loops a fixed upper bound. So while true does not count. I didn't have it beat out of me, but I certainly had a professor who was like, I will never give you a passing grade if I see while true. You must have an endpoint, unless you are working in embedded systems where microcontrollers require a while true in order to function continuously. And that is a very specific use case. So if you're doing game development, you probably have a while true loop, or you have a separate like initialization process to have a game run. But those are very like discrete things. When you have code like an application that runs, you don't need while true, it just runs. Like you have a continuous server that's set up for you on the back end. So for example, Flask run will create a server for me or create a local like instance for me and run continuously. There's no while true that I have made. Don't use dynamic memory allocation. This is rooted in C and C++, where you can dynamically allocate memory, where you said like, oh yeah, this array is like size 10, but actually like we're going to change it later and make it like 20 or 40. And that's because some languages allow you to do this, where you can say like, oh, once you've run out of room, keep adding more space. But the thing is, if you're running on things that are older, NASA, because they're like tested, confirmed, you know every bug, you know every issue, NASA, aviation, things that are 5, 10, 20 years behind on purpose, because they need such rigorous things, then yeah, you don't have space for that. You have a very limited hardware setup that limits your ability to allocate memory. What you have is what you have. You can't magically add memory to Curiosity. The Curiosity is on Mars. You can't add space. You can't just be like, yes, let me shove a RAM stick in or memory. No, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So I'm not going to read through the rest of these. I've given you a couple examples. I do want to get back to reading through and understanding the code, but I do want to clarify, like, yeah, there are ways to code better and comment better that allow you to write better code in the process. So if you're thinking about these things actively, like your code will actually inherently be better. If you do it as an afterthought, you'll build the practice, but you won't get all like the benefits of writing good, clean, self-documenting code. So rant over. Let's get back to commenting. We don't need to worry about this anymore. We want to know what the heck is going on here. I am still unable to. I love being sick. My brain is not 100% here. But yeah, okay. So let's go through what app. So we know app is the entry. We're going to start there, and we're going to work our way through with everything that gets called. So we don't know what the heck's going on with these database connections. We have Flash stuff. I'm guessing that means app runs. I'm guessing this is related to OAuth stuff. And so we have OAuth register. Okay, I'm thinking this is all OAuth. Could this be a function? Possibly. So we'll make a quick note. Could this be a function? Specifically an initialization function, because this is all starting up the app, associating with it, setting it all up. Then we have routes. Could this be a whole file? And the thing is, I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because when you're working with other frameworks, like say React, typically routes is its own file in JavaScript. But depending on the scope of how Python and Flask work together on this, I don't know if that's possible. And so that's a quick Google that we'll do after it. I'm dying. I have such a stuffed nose right now. I keep having to blow my nose, which people are patient about, and I appreciate. We'll probably take a break in like 15 minutes, by the way, just so that way everyone can go get water, take a quick walk break, and get back to it. Because again, this is a bit of a boring stream as far as like we're coding, we're commenting and figuring out what's up, and then we're going to decide what feature we do next. Right. So we have these routes. So we have login, callback. I'm guessing this is for OAuth. We have logout. Okay. All these routes are for OAuth. Would it be an OAuth file, an OAuth function, a routes thing? Who knows? But then we have other routes that are separated by this extra line that I don't understand, which also is not recommended. Again, extra line. You do want readability, so you don't want them like scrunched, but having that line is usually all right. So we have a home route. It's kind of self-explanatory if you are familiar with it, but it looks like let's see, sharks is equal to none. I opened the JSON for shark data, which I'm guessing this should actually be a call to our database and not the JSON itself, because we should be using our database. So we are going to have to rewrite that. So let's make a note. Rewrite this route to get cards from the database. And so thinking about how many sharks we had in the shark data JSON, there was only like 2 or 3 sharks, which tells me that we probably want to limit the amount of sharks that we get on a query. So let's also make sure that we know, like, limit the what's it called? Amount returned on the DB. And you can shorthand this, by the way. Okay, so we have stuff about cards, but we also have a template that's being rendered called previous cards.html. So we'll jump here next, but let's finish out the file because there's not much left. If there were left, then we pretty much would like self-mark for ourselves. We wouldn't actually run things. We're just reading the code right now. Again, we're getting familiar with what the fuck happened. Where we're like, what did Past Cecilia do? What was Past Cecilia on? Past Cecilia was sick this time as well. So who knows? But we notice that the objects are being set equal to each other, which tells me there's probably a name parameter in the render template or in the call for previous cards that's expecting a shark's object, which has various features. We also have a session object, which I don't know where session is. Where is session? Where is this? Okay, session is named up here, but where is it set? And what is it associated with? I guess it's associated with auth0. I guess it's a global variable that gets passed in. So this is what I mean. I'm like, what do we do? What is session? What is session and what does it do? What did I do? This is why wrapping is nice. Yeah. Figure out what session is. Where it's declared if needed, if at all. Which chances are it might be declared when auth0 is set up, and it's just stored later, that we're not available. Oh my god, I need to blow my nose again. This is breathing is so nice until I can't. Okay. Remember, wear masks outside if you're sick. Don't get other people sick. Otherwise, you'll get a sick MLHer on your Global Hack Week stream who keeps having to pause to blow her nose. No, we're good. Okay. All right. So we're like, we have some people who just joined, also some people who dropped. Totally fair. I don't blame them. This is quite boring comparatively, but very important. This is the boring part of when you revitalize a project. Figure out what you did. So to jump back really quickly, all throughout the week, you're talking about how to like make your resume, make your resume shine, and like revitalizing projects and studying for coding interviews. But what isn't really talked about is, so you've put a project on your resume. What happens after when it's been there for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years? It really depends. My projects have been on there for a while in my resume. And you have to ask yourself, do you remember what's going on in that project? if an interviewer said, okay, show me the GitHub repo, pick a file that you're proud of, and walk me through about 300 lines of code, which I've had happen. Like on-site interviews, they've done it to me. They've given me a laptop, say, pull it up and walk me through it. And ever since that day, every so often, I'm like, let me go through and figure out what projects are on my resume and see, is there any that I have motivation to improve? Are there any that don't align with certain company values that I'm interested in applying to remove them because that would be problematic? Or can I spin a story about it, indicating how I've grown as a developer? Because at the end of the day, what's the story? And the story is really important because you want something memorable to talk to an employer about so that they'll remember you as, oh yeah, the shark girl, which has happened before. I've rolled with that motif for some time now, and then coming to the MLH community and Blahaj gang and everything, it worked out great. It was my calling for the entire time. So we're going through app.py, we're commenting all these questions and things that we need to figure out to see like what's going on and what's happening and where do we need to refresh our memory so that way we can continue the project, add a new feature, shine it all up, and make sure that it's something that we could actually present to someone and say, yeah, here's 300 lines of code I'm confident in being able to explain because it's self-documenting, there's good comments, we're following a coding standard, yada, yada, yada. So coming back to this one, we have the last route. We also have this, sorry, which is that we have the card route. I'm guessing this is for an individual shark. We open that, yeah. Actually, no. So we're printing only one. I don't know why. I guess it's to prove that it was retrieved. But in this instance, we're giving all of the shark data to it. I don't know why. And until we look at these templates, we have no idea what's going on. And then we have DB tests with shark ID. We've gotten all the sharks. And then we return the render test of shark is equal to shark. Yeah, so I'm also doing this on purpose for stream, being like, this is a live run through of like, what happens when you go back to your old project? It's a very slow process, but it's fun because you get to be like, oh, why did I make those decisions? And being like, wow, past me had no idea what was going on. Or sometimes past me really knew what was going on and wrote some good code, but I don't understand why they did it. So we're gonna go to the first render template because logically this is gonna be our home route. So let's go to previous cards template. Prev cards. I don't know why I named it prev cards though. Why? So we have a Jinja template, which I know about, but if someone was reading this and didn't understand, they would have no idea this is Jinja. Like if they're not familiar with Python, they're not familiar with Flask, they're going to be like, what am I looking at? Like it's clear I can do replacements, but they're like, what? There's nothing in here to indicate it's Jinja unless you know about it. So more things about how you should have good readmes that tell you like we're using blah, 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 because whatever. So that's another thing. So let's go quickly add update templates. Jinja templates. I think it's Jinja 2 actually. Okay. All right. So let's move app.py over here so we know what we're looking at. We're looking at prev cards. We extend the base HTML, which we should probably have an understanding of what the base HTML is, but this is pretty short, so let's keep going. So we have block content, if session. So this is if someone's been logged in. That one seems pretty straightforward. And it gives us some information about a user and whether what their name is, whether they followed, who they followed, if anything. I don't know why. I think we just did this as like a placeholder with the intent of fixing it later because we didn't have that that value in the database at the time. So if a validated session, showcase whether they followed anyone or not. We might remove that and say, good luck. Otherwise, sorry, prev cards, left card, mid card, right card. Knowing how I typically write things, this tells me this is like a 3-column setup of sharks. I really don't like this manual process here though. This is not ideal. This is bad code. We should be able to instead do a for loop that just does this, adjusts the mid and right card, and then we just like programmatically write this because look, We have shark 0 properties image, shark 0 properties name, shark 1 properties image, shark. This is gross. This is not ideal. So also, because of the updates that have gone on, this is broken because we now have a database that we can roll with and actually call information and find the individual stuff. And so I wonder if actually this should be updated, this render template, that we should only get the first 3 sharks or something. And it's also like, why only 3 sharks? Was this a proof of concept? Was this on purpose? If the homepage is only showing 3, would we want to show random ones? So there's all these different features we can do. So let's make note of that. I don't have arrow keys on my keyboard, so I have to do things manually. All right, so notes to self. So we could randomize 3 sharks to be passed in, pass into proof cards. Why is it named this? Oh, preview. Change to preview cards. Because I think this is probably a preview page. Like anytime you go on a social media site, they're gonna show you like stock photos of people using their stuff, or stock photos of like find your friends, and then show you like profile images. And I think that's what we were trying to go for. So we'll change the name, so that way when we read the files, we're like, we know what's going on here. And then we also have bio goes here, which tells me that the bios weren't inserted. So we'll also have to change this route to also include the bios that we've generated. And that's a separate file, which we should technically store in the database at some point. So also add bios, put bios in database. We only have like 6 or 7 bios. So we also need to generate new bios for all 417 records in the database. So how do we do that? How do we optimize that? I know ChatGPT has an API. I'm not sure if it's paid for or anything like that, but that's something that we'll need to see if we add that to our possible feature list. No arrow keys. No arrow keys or marking or anything. I'm a monster. I deserve to be sick. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So we've made all these notes. Even if we don't come back to this project, let's say tomorrow we do a brand new project, we do the same process of going through and commenting things. Let's say we come back to that project and we wanted to start back up again. If we commit these comments, we know exactly what's going on now. We can go and say, like, what was the next steps for this specific section? How are we supposed to improve the code? Now we have notes. It's very important to comment your code. But that's a valid question as well. Okay, you can comment your code, but what about your HTML? Do you comment it? Should you comment it? How do you comment it? And so right now I'm doing things on the template. And I don't know that I would put comments in here specifically. And that's a question for Google, or a personal preference, or explaining why you put comments in one place and not the other. Because you don't want redundancies everywhere. I mean, logically, I hope, or at least logically to me, I always start from where a project starts. Like, what is the entry point of it running? And that's going to be app.py, which will determine where I'm being sent to at any given instance. That's the main controller like file that I have right now. And that could change from moving routes around to setting up a function for auth0 setup. Who knows? I just have to go Google, like, what's the best way to do these things? Because I, at the time, didn't know about things and I was learning. So what I want to do is figure out, like, how does everybody else do it? So that involves the research process of like looking at auth0 projects, looking at Flask projects. How have people organized things? Which makes sense and which doesn't? And if they do make sense, is it actually a standard that the community is using? Because if you're not following a community standard, people aren't going to understand your code. You're not going to have people working on open source with you, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So we've gone through this card. I think I kind of get what we were doing. Not ideal, but whatever. I think the short of this is actually that we want a homepage that is like, if there's a session, show us a different homepage. If there's not, show us the not logged in page. That's my understanding. So, because it's a home page, since there's nothing after the slash. logged in versus not. I'm gonna like Facebook when you haven't logged in. Okay. Cool. So let's jump to card and see what was going on there. Move this over. Pretty short, actually. Whoa. Also broken. I got rid of voting in the database. I got rid of rating in the database. Species is not type in the database. And maybe actually that should be replaced. And maybe that's something that we also make a note of. Where in image chart, did I write that? Rewrite to species. Alrighty. Save that, close that. All right, what else do we have? Gender, stage of life, that's the same. Tag location. We didn't include that. Let's get rid of that one as well. And then we also have image of blah. We have alt text. Yay for accessibility. So past me was thinking about accessibility, which I love, being that I wrote alt text for the images, where it's alt text. It's an image of the name. I guess we could add to it and say, which is of type. Well, no, because they would already have that. It's redundant information. So yeah, we can leave that as is. Okay. So we have also extend space HTML. We're going to really have to check that out. One moment while I blow my nose. Cool. Content. So this has been fairly consistent. That tells me it's probably a Ginger thing that we just put block content or we give it a name. And then we have a for loop that we should have done in that other file, you know, hey, that 3. But if we know that there's always going to be 3 cards, maybe we don't need a for loop and we just need to put in like 3 sharks, you know? So we have the name, the stage of life. These are with different headers. We give it also all these other stats, and then we end the for loop. So I think this is either for a single card or many. I wonder if this is just like you scroll through. So I'm not, what is going on here? This was an app and we just have card. Should it be cards plural? I don't know. Does this show all cards? All sharks? Or just what? It looks like all of them. Woof. And what does this shark ID get all here? That, oh, but it's a route, so it automatically knows what shark ID. I don't know what's going on here. What's even happening? So clearly we need to comment our stuff a lot because I don't know what's going on. But what I've been mostly confused about now is the space HTML. What's going on here? Okay, so we literally have a base. It's got the original HTML tag. It's got the viewports, adjusting for different sizes, bootstrap CSS. Okay, so yeah, then we would name blocks based on what they are. Is there a title? What is title coming from? Maybe it's just because it's in the title. I'm really confused now. What? No idea. So we have a header, we have a menu, we have class title, we have the URL for index. I think we probably Googled this. This would be nice to comment about. We have all this commented out, probably because it didn't work or something. We have a log out button that we've also commented out, probably because we didn't put the feature in. And then we have container content. Oh, okay. So then what this probably means is that, I don't know where title is, but at the very least, all those other things where they had content, this is being inserted here based on how Jinja tends to work. Okay, so that makes more sense. Then we have a footer, and then we have script stuff. Okay, pretty self-explanatory. Don't need to really comment much about that. So if the base HTML is done pretty and figured out, we actually never need to touch it again. We just need to figure out what's going in the content or container that we've set up. And I'm gonna, CSS is not for today, not for my tired, sick brain. Yeah, so we kind of have an idea of what's going on in these routes. But we also have the render test. This doesn't exist anymore. We're gonna delete those two, just so we have something functional. Extend space, content. Okay, so we have the inserts now. What is test? Okay, so this is no longer applicable. We don't use this anymore. But I'm not gonna delete it just in case, but we should plan to delete it. Then we have index. I don't know what's going on here either. I don't even know if this is used. So we have a few files that aren't really used. We'll make a note for ourselves to delete test.html and index.html. Just because we're not sure if it needs to be deleted or not. And I'd rather not delete it and then break everything for real. Because at least things kind of work. Okay. Yeah. So we've gone through the files now. What is test.py? Why does this? We should delete that too. Delete that. Nothing uses test.py. All right. So now that we've gone through our files, we have our CSS, the style, it's fine. We have bios, which will eventually merge into the database. This is kept just in case we need a tester without querying the API, which we really shouldn't have to, but now that we have all the records, fine. We've gone through base, card, etc. Cool. So it has been about an hour and 10 minutes of just commenting and clarifying why this is important and what we're doing. So now let's figure out what the next steps are by taking a break for 5 minutes. So I can refill my water, take a quick snack break, and then y'all can also think about, well, what features do we really want to work on next? There's a number of things that we called out in the comments that we need to fix. We have no guarantee of this working right now either. And there's some things that we don't understand about Auth0 because it's been a few months. Like April to today is November. That's like, oh God, I can't do math. 11 minus 5. 6 months. Okay. Yeah. It's time for a break. So let me pull up the notes that we made. And I don't want to split it. What if I don't? What if I want to remove the split? We're going to just close all these up. Okay. So we have this. Let's go ahead and close that. So we have our notes, and then we also have our list of features where we get to think about what we're doing. So we're going to also do that. So that's where it's readable. Okay. Is there anything else that's going on here? All right. So there's a couple things that we've made notes about. But yeah, let me leave this up while I go take a break. And y'all can help me decide what's going to be the feature that we end up implementing over the next 2 sessions. For the remainder of this, like 45-ish minutes, more like 30-ish minutes, and then tomorrow's 2-hour session. Cool. Break time. Okay. Wow, right when I sit down, I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Alrighty. Peanut is sleeping. It's past breakfast, so it's the post-breakfast nap. All right. Banners. Cool. So, I left up some feature ideas. We definitely finished commenting. Reviewed the code for future proofing. We did things, even though it didn't look like it. I promise it was useful. And we've decided not to reject the project because, yeah, this is funny and I like it. All right. Did anyone have a feature that they wanted us to work on or just get started on, or any of the things that we need to fix? I'm also going to test my fate and do Flask run. Let's see what's broken. Yeah, me too. Yeah. All right. Well, we knew that. I knew there was going to be a break. No one's telling me a feature, so I'm going to pick something, which is that it's broken and we need to fix it. And I don't know why it's broken. What happened? Oh, there's an error. That would help. What do you hate? Cool. So it retrieves stuff. Where's the last error message? Here we go. Undefined error. Object has no attribute user. Oh, this is probably here then. We're gonna just do that and comment it out. And this. If I remember, Ginger will not read those comments though. I think. Yeah. All right, let's go delete that. Delete that. I'm gonna copy that. No, wait, hang on. I want to remove the comment. Copy. Remove. Save. You know that file I'm gonna delete? We're not gonna delete it. We're gonna dump it here. We're not gonna use it, but it's gonna be our new main test page. We're not using it though. All right. Still doesn't like that. Ginger to handle exception, previous card, content and what? Where is their user that it's missing? Right. What? Let's just close the server and do it again. Maybe it'll stop freaking out. There we go. Okay, that's what it was. Okay, so in order to change Ginger, I need to stop the server and restart, I think. Might need to change. But, okay, now we can kind of see what was going on with that 3. Oh, and it looks nice. And because it was broken as heck the other day. So I was like, oh, that's not going to work. All right, functional. You don't have the BIOS, though. But maybe because I did the database stuff, we go back and we go get the databases. So let's see. We have get database connection, turn connection, row factory. What's row factory? Get all. Okay. Get shark by ID. Okay. All right. So we had some stuff that we were using. I think this is probably fine then. Hey, this is self-documenting. Get database connection, return connection. Duh. I had read it, but it was commented, so my brain was like, no, this is not readable. Get all, maybe this should be get all sharks. Yeah, because we're selecting all from sharks. We do fetch all. We close the connection and we return shark. So who used get all? This one did. So let's go ahead and there's a way to refactor this better. There's only one call, so it's fine. All right. And then we have get shark. We get it by ID. Okay. We could change this to just get shark and then no. Okay. And then we fetch one. If shark is none, no sharks here. Okay. So there's some error handling. All right. This is self-explanatory, I think. I think this is self-documenting, I think. Looking at it, is there anything we can do better? Get database connection, get all sharks, get shark. Not particularly. I think they should be individual functions, and that's fine. Is there a way to get random stuff? Probably, but I don't want to do that right now. Alrighty, so we have a potential initialization function. Do we have a start made? No, because it's Flask. I don't think we need to do that. Okay. We don't need this anymore because we're not using JSON requests right now, or API requests, because it's already in the database. So now my question is Flask routes file. Yeah. Sure, let's see what Stack Overflow has to say about it. Python package. Let's see. So we have routes. Oh, okay. Import Flask app variable from main is inside another one. So we have this here and that there. Okay. Main refers to your entry file. Cool. So we could actually refactor this and just put the routes in a file and like just clean up our app file, which would be nice. And now we also know that if we have more routes that we want to add, whether it's like different types of users, different sharks, all this other stuff, that's all in one file and it's readable and not like a bajillion lines in the app.py folder. Okay, cool. So let's do that really quick then. New file. Oh, jet lag catching up. All right. Let's go take all the routes. And put it here and save it. Routes.py. Boy. Rename because I can't type. Sorry, y'all. The sick is strong. Cool. So now I can't find some stuff. That's totally fine. We're gonna fix that up. Go back and let's do that. App.py, import test routes. Okay, we'll just go copy that then. Oops. Save. Go to top. Clean it up. Import routes. Did they? Yep, app.route. Okay. Main refers to your entry file. Maybe it's applet? Maybe? Hopefully? Method is explained. Okay. Import test routes cannot be at the top of app.py. Circular dependency doesn't look good. That's fair. This one is a better answer. Let's go look at the other answer. Ooh, that's cool. I like this. Import views. Wait. Single test.py, main route defined, test 2. Too many routes. Create some component of your app as a blueprint in a separate file. I don't want to do that. That looks boring. Blueprints, specific files. There's this one that we saw. Oh, so this is further then. Centralized URL map. Flask empty at GitHub. Okay. What is this? Oh, this is a Flask boilerplate. JK! How did you do it though? Maybe it's under blueprint. Models. Nope. Views. Oh, here it is. Okay, so they do from plus, do this, do that. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. And we just add that for everything. So we have models. So what's the models look like? Models. Then you have skew this. Okay. I don't actually know what's going on here. So rather than break things like we thought, no. We're not going to do this just yet. But now that it's a bigger endeavor than I thought it would be, we'll leave it here for now. All right. We don't need this anymore. Yeah, I think at this point we'll just do code cleanup because it's important. Let's see. So we've got about 15 minutes left. What's an easy thing to fix? Oh yeah, I was mentioning I was going to do it from the database. Let's do that. There's one here. This one, shark ID, get all sharks. Wait, why am I doing that? Yeah, why am I doing that? DB test. Where was DB? Oh, it's a URL. Duh. Okay. Well, we don't want to open the file. We just want to get 3 sharks. Maybe we just make a new function, get n sharks. Yeah. And then like n equals get database.connection, and then we have sharks is equal to clone.execute, and we want to get a specific number, and then can we like limit 3? I think is what. So get fetch all. Yeah. Limit close. Return sharks. Okay. Let's go make sure that works. Yeah. All right. SQLite select limit. Limit. Yeah, it's just limit. Limit row count. Okay. But instead of n, we want to do. Oh, okay. I see. Let's do. All right. Python SQLite limit variable n. Sure. We'll repurpose this. There we go. Okay. Select from where status limit. Put a question mark. And then. Oh, they have execute. Yeah. Yeah. C.execute. Yep. I didn't know about that. Yeah, because and we're only doing comma. Where is it? Oh, it's comma right after that. Okay, comma. And then we want just n, comma. Cool. So this should work where we're getting n number of sharks. And then what we want on the front page was not these. We're going to leave this commented until we fix it. Oops. Come on. Cooperate. Thank you. Oh, I see. I'm clicking the wrong button. Sorry. Lack of error keys. All right. So what we actually want is get n sharks. Get 3 of them. There we go. Because we only want 3 of them. We need to rename this to preview cards, by the way. I guess it would be login page. What would it be? Maybe just main page. I think it should be named main page. Main page. Name this main page. main page, sharks. Now it's 3. And we leave the session, which we'll leave that for now. We are going to need to fix the main page anyway, because this gets JSON data, and I don't remember how it's returned. So I did test it. So in init shark table, let's make sure. What did we do to test it? We said select fetch. Let's do this. Let's check that they are actually being retrieved in this. Oh, this is the result. Let's check that they're being received. Okay. And yeah. Oop. I did things. I didn't want that specifically to exit. Cool. Alrighty. Sharks. Let's make this result. And then main page. Let's just see what happens here. Open. And it should actually pull this. So now we go to, let's close all this. We don't need it for now. Python. Let's go refresh this. Oh. That. Something doesn't seem right. Let's just close that and that and that. Make sure this is dead. Okay, cool. This didn't print anything. Yeah, there we go. That's what I wanted. I wanted it to break. Cannot operate in a closed database. What? 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 Did I do something funky? Let's get sharks. Yeah. What happened? Cannot open it. 95. But I. All right. Curious. What happens? Okay, so it's not, it isn't like that. Why aren't you running the function? What's going on? Any ideas in chat in the meantime while I remember how to function? Bad joke. Sorry. Okay, we have get and sharks. We have get and sharks. Get connection. Oh, what the heck? Hello, no, we have the connection. Call not execute. Yeah, okay. Select from sharks, limit, question mark, and yeah, I did it here. So select from sharks for ID is equal to select from sharks limit by number. And then we put the n in, and we have an n of 3. Did it print? Hey, Marie. Here. And adding 3 sharks. Let's restart it. Oh, get cursor objects. That's not what I want. Python SQL get cursor objects. There we go. Execute any, fetch 1, fetch all. Don't I need to call fetch all? I have fetch 1 here, so just fetch all. All right. Close it just for the giggles, and then yeah. So I got the row. Wait. Got the 3 sharks, and then it printed these. Did I go to the wrong one? No, yeah. And then I got the names. Did I get the names? Did I? Where is this? Yeah. Print the name of each record. And then row object does not have attribute properties. Oh, this is Ginger. Okay. It's fixed in that it's broken, but that's okay. We know about it. We know that we want here. We don't need this anymore. Is there a way to get the? I want the read-only property list containing the description of the columns. Connection. Account. Cursor class properties. Erases description. Oh, yeah. Okay. Fine. I will do it the right way, which is that I need to. Okay. It's in order of which they appear, this is bad. So we're gonna do this the nice way, and we're gonna reformat the data, which is you should get a way that data is clean. But okay, we have the results, so there's that at least. Thank God. We can delete that. See, that looks so much cleaner now. Just get n sharks. And then we go back here and we clean up that. Blah. Cool. Let's go ahead and see. Can we do an interface with this or put it in a dictionary that's already established? Probably not. How am I supposed to do this? Well, what data did we want from it? Let's go back to main page. Main page has the data that we want, which is that they're going to get the image, the name. Oh, just the image and the name. So we only need that. Okay, image is at ID 1. Let's see. There has to be a better way to do this. Yeah, okay. So for now, we only want the image and the name. Select image, or name, image, right? Just name and image. Yeah, okay. Cool. So we've done that and that. We know what those indices will be, which will be index 0, name, 1 will be image. Cool. And then we'll go here to this one. So it's going to be passed in as that. Let's just get sharks because we know that it'll already be the results. So this is fine. This is self-documenting. Yeah, get in sharks. Self-documented. Cool. We'll randomize it later. And we're going to go to the main page and drag this over here now. And so instead of shark 0 properties name, we're going to actually just leave this 0 because we want the 0 index shark and the name at 0 index. Holy, what just happened? There we go. So where else does name come up? Right here. This is this. And then this one is going to be 0. This is going to be 0. This is not good code, but it is a little easier to read now that we have comments. And then this is going to be 1. And that's going to be 1. And that's going to be 1. Yeah, still got a bracket. This is going to be 0. Okay. And this is going to be 0. Okay. Let's see if that works. Cool. Still probably going to be an error. Local variable get n sharks reference before. So, wait, what? That wasn't an issue. What do you mean? What? just put it first. This is sometimes I hate Python. Sometimes I hate Python. That wasn't an issue. What changed? Okay, what? Line 94. 94. This wasn't an issue prior. What do you mean? What changed? What changed? That's fine. Oh, did I do that wrong or something? I don't think that's going to fix it, but... No, I just derped. All right, cool. Well, that's cleaned up, which is now it's all pretty. That makes perfect sense to look at. Yay. All right. Limit the amount returned. We did a function. We did a thing. And we're at time. Perfect. Cool. We didn't do that. That's fine. Let's go make sure that's cleaned up. Yeah, that doesn't need to be reordered. Cool. No, we're not going to do it that way. Cool. All right, we have a mini functional project. Let's stop this. Let's see what we've changed. A lot. Mostly more commenting, deleting things. So hit add and make sure. Again, this is not what you're supposed to do. We don't want to actually add. Let's see. Add.hi. Yeah, just add the whole thing, and then we're going to remove routes. I think it's reset.py. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we only have the stuff that we want to add, which is readme, app, init, templates, comments. Yep, cool. And so we did a lot. So this is going to be a gross command. Commented changes. Not commented. Noted changes, future changes. Write the database. That page. Sick. And push. Okay. And that's going to be in that career week branch. Cool. All right. So we did a lot in that we got familiar with the project again, which, as you saw, took the majority of the workshop, which is not by design. It was actually quite important. How else will you understand a project, especially when you don't have comments? Shame on past me. But then we also piggybacked off some work I did yesterday where I set up the database and cleaned that all up. And we're actually able to fix our front page. And so now the front page is set up with the database. Next stage is tomorrow. Will probably be more of an actual coding session now that we're like, okay, we've got the initial hard work done of figuring out like, where do we even leave off? And now we can actually start moving with that momentum and doing more things and really polish it for tomorrow, such that we can do a sample interview or at least pretend as if somebody were asking about our project and telling us, and we want to tell them the story of what happened and make sure that's interesting to them. So I appreciate that you stuck through it. I'm pretty sure you have this in the background being like, yeah, I guess I should comment. Yeah, I guess I should go back to projects. So at least if you paid attention in the first 20 minutes, good. After that, that's a put on 2 times speed kind of video. But yeah, so the sun is obviously out now. Join me tomorrow, same time, for the continuation and completion of whatever it is we're going to do tomorrow. And like I said, thanks for joining. Let me go ahead and share that registration link one more time in case you joined late. Don't forget to check in. And yeah, so join me tomorrow. We'll keep going on Shiver and make it just a bit more polished than it was when we first started. Cool. See you. Have a good rest of your day, evening, morning, afternoon. Time is hard. It's time to go. Goodbye.